billion will be required to combat climate action in the country by 2030. Christopher Teacher was there and filed in this report.
The report, Country Climate and Development, is a flagship document by the World Bank Group across various countries that is aimed at finding and promoting growth discussions on the implementation of climate-smart policies and investments, as climate issues and sustainable development are increasingly linked. At the launch of Senegal's report, senior environmental specialist in charge of climate change adaptation and resilience with the World Bank Group, Dr. Aram Tor, warned that the country risks pushing over 2 million of its population into poverty by 2030 if investment is not made in sustainable development to mitigate the impact of climate change.
Until or unless we integrate climate risks and make sure that there's a paradigm shift in how we take those risks seriously. The modeling that we've done for the report shows that if nothing is done today, we risk losing up to 4% of GDP by 2030 and up to 9.4% of GDP by 2050 due to climate shocks.
Dr. Aram Tor also stated that a total of some $8 billion will be required to combat climate action in the country by the year 2030.
It looks big, it's only 4.5% of GDP. That's how much we spend on energy subsidy in the country. At the 2030 to 2050 timescale, we see that the needs will be 10 billion only, 2% of GDP. So this is mission possible.
A report by Christopher Aticho. You are listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM Dakar, Senegal, and across the world on wadr.org. Here's a reminder of our top stories. Donald Trump takes a comfortable lead ahead of Vice President Kamala Harris in the U.S. 2024 presidential election. Latest World Bank report says 3 million Senegalese risks being pushed into poverty by 2030. Mixed reactions trail as UN mission arrives in Guinea to assess electoral process. Ahead in the news, UNICEF calls for urgent action on child protection in Nigeria. We also have the press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Many thanks for staying with us. UNICEF has issued a strong call for action to protect Nigerian children from violence and exploitation, highlighting the critical need to address harmful social norms affecting youth. Speaking at the opening of the Social Norms Conference 2024 in Abuja, UNICEF's representative George Eki emphasized the agency's dedication to driving social and behavioral change to counteract the increasing vulnerabilities that children face due to globalization. WA's Usman Omar in Abuja has more.
The event, themed From Research to Reality, Social Behavioral Solutions for Accelerated Human Capital Development, gathered experts and advocates from across West Africa. George Eki underscores UNICEF's collaboration with international partners, including the United States, to empower Nigeria's most at-risk youth.
UNICEF work across many programmatic areas. We work around issues around child protection, education, water and sanitation, health especially as well. And then, all this work that we do actually has issues around norms that actually drives behavior.
Keynote speaker, Chief Mojima Konjola, a respected journalist, focused on strengthening family structures, which she's described as the heart of our nation.
The family is the bedrock on which norms, characters are formed. And over the years, we've ignored the power of the family. So that's why parents don't give that attention that the children need to mold them into who they are.
The first day of the conference attracted prominent voices across various fields. Moshood Lawal, head of corporate affairs at Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency of Nigeria, highlighted his organization's Grow Nigeria initiative, encouraging citizens to support local products as part of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's Renewed Hope agenda.
It's very emphatic to say the theme of the conference, social norms and behavioral change towards human capital development, is key to what Sminan is looking at as the overall agenda of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's agenda, the Renewed Hope, which dovetails into Sminan's Grow Nigeria strategy. When you don't change the stereotypes, the social norms of what people usually erroneously believe in, there's no how a country will move forward.
Mariam Jakite, a technical advisor from the Francophone Social Norm Learning Collaborative, underlined the importance of social norms in achieving public health and development goals. As the 2024 Social Norms Conference continues, UNICEF and its partners are calling on Nigerian society to adopt progressive changes that will uplift children and families. With the diverse assembly of voices, the conference has set an ambitious course to foster a safer and more inclusive Nigeria, promoting social norms that will benefit future generations. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
This is the Newspaper Review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the Newspaper Review.
The Newspaper Review.
For today's press review, let's join WADR's Banjul correspondent Sankle Janko for headlines on the national dailies.
Hello there and welcome to this edition of the press review. Let's begin with the Standard newspaper. Minister expects no hike in Hajj prices in 2025 with the photo of Minister of Lands and Regional Affairs Ahmad N.K. Eba. PRU shooting journalist trained on assault and battery guide. This other story reads, GPU explains media stakeholders meeting with Barrow. Let's move on to the Point newspaper, and the lead story on the Point newspaper reads, $1.3 million regional soil fertility mapping project launched. That's the lead story on the Point newspaper. Alleged Westfield killer reacts on shard of deceased. Bagwe claims another young life in Gunjur. That's another story on the Point newspaper. This other one reads, NRA will never compromise on quality standard of roads in Gambia. Minister Juve addresses 48th COMSES ministerial session in Istanbul. This other one reads, Gambia Press Union, that is GPU stakeholders meet Barrow on concerns over press freedom. And this other one says, Barrow leaves for Morocco on private visit. Let's take a look at the final newspaper for today, and that is the Fourier newspaper. The lead story on the Fourier newspaper reads, Aisha Jammeh urges government to engage Senegal to access graves of missing persons. Aisha Jammeh is the daughter of Haruna Jammeh, one of former President Yahya Jammeh's brother, who was also a victim of his regime. And the daughter has urged the Barrow-led government to engage Senegal to access missing graves in the Senegalese territory. GPU engaged President Barrow on media law reforms, press freedom. Businessman explains mysterious 1.6 million payment he received from KMC. VP says regulations for disaster risk financing developed, signed. GPU develops guide to protect journalists. This other one reads, witness says he is not entitled to gratuity paid to him, and UNESCO sensitized communities on effects of electronic medical waste. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies, and it's back to you in the studio.
Many thanks, Sankle Janko.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest this afternoon is Dr. Michael Nketia, an international relations expert who joins the discussion to explain the dynamics surrounding the U.S. 2024 presidential election. Nketia helps us understand the shift and factors that influenced voters' choice between Republican candidate Donald Trump and the Democratic Party's candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris. But most importantly, Michael Nketia shares his views on the impact of the elections on global peace and security, economy, and democracies.
To be fair with you and your listeners, the deciding factor since time immemorial in almost every election, the basic determining factor has been bread and butter issues. It is obvious that during the administration of former President Donald Trump, that's between 2017 and 2020, America's economy witnessed an unprecedented economic growth. Inflation was way lower. Jobs were created for the first time since the 2007 global economic recession or crisis. And then boom, early part of 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted not just the American economy, but also the global economy. It is obvious that even the administration of President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, there's been hyperinflation in the United States.
How democratic is the U.S. electoral process, and what effect could its integrity have on global democracy?
The sanctity of America's democracy has never been in doubt. Mind you, America is the world's oldest democracy. In practice, for more than 200 years of democracy, 300 years of democracy. Of course, we were informed that since 2016, there has been attempts by some enemy states, allegedly Russia, North Korea, probably China or Iran, to influence the electoral outcome in America. However, all those attempts have not been that successful to sway the American public in making a decision contrary to their traditional beliefs and also happenings within their geographical democratic confines. I believe that the American democratic system, electoral system, is free, is fair, is transparent. It can be relied upon to give an accurate representation of exactly what the people voted for.
In what ways could the outcome of the 2024 U.S. elections affect global peace and security?
Varied global consequences. We know, as we have been told over and over again, that when America sneezes, the rest of the world catches cold. Of course, that impact is still visible among us, although it may have dwindled a bit. But of course, we are talking about the preponderance of America's hegemonic superpower. It covers military, political, cultural influence. We know that much of the world has been destabilized since Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. We know that much of the world has also been destabilized since the October 7th attack in Israel last year. For the past 1 year, we've had a lot of instability in the Middle East, specifically the Arab region, where Israel has made incursions into the Palestine region, into Syria, into Lebanon, into parts of Iraq, and have even carried out direct attacks on Iranian soil. All these matters of serious global concerns. We know their impact on the global economy. America is at the center of the global trade system. They, through the leadership of a new American president, can come out with measures and policies to either end the war in Palestine, in Lebanon, in Syria, end the war in Ukraine.
Finally, sir, what are the prospects for Africa for strengthening its bilateral relations with the United States in the coming years?
Well, Africa stands to benefit a lot, as we've seen over the years and in the past. We could cut financial aid to support various social infrastructural development, education, healthcare infrastructure, and more importantly, the rising threat of violence, extremism, and jihadism on the West African sub-region. Form alliance to address some of these social, security, and political challenges on the continent.
Dr. Michael Nketia is an international relations expert. And in the sporting world, Nigerian striker OSIWA begins to make a mark for Galatasaray ahead of sports clash. Tottenham Hotspur will be bidding to maintain their perfect start in the Europa League this season when they head to the Cauldron of Istanbul on Thursday to face the opponent side, spearheaded by Lone Star Victor Osimhen. The Nigerian moved to the Turkish Giants to loan in early September after being frozen out at Napoli, where former Tottenham boss Antonio Conte became coach after the Italian side put up a poor defense of their Serie A title. Osimhen was the star of Napoli's run to the Scudetto in 2023 and was expected to be sold in the last close season, but there were no takers for a player with a net value of $142 million release clause. Galatasaray failed to qualify for the Champions League proper after losing over 2 legs to Young Boys in August, leaving them instead in the Europa League. And with that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Krista Mukidi and Maojo Juva for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is WADR's agenda flagship program 50/50 with Nadiri Tete, to be followed at top of the hour of 1 p.m. by the second edition of our comprehensive news package in French Info Chez Vous with Alpha Abubakar. I'm Abdullahi Hassan. Good afternoon.
And many